You didn't get to where you are by playing small. You got here by outworking, outthinking, and outleading the room. But the higher you climb, the harder the questions get, and nobody hands you a playbook for this level. Welcome to Full Strength Leader, the podcast for executives, high performers, and leaders who refuse to coast with surface-level leadership advice and ready to do the real work. Hi, I'm Kabrina Ashley, applied neuroscience practitioner and leadership consultant, and this is where I bring you the intersection of science and strategy and where real leadership gets built. Every episode, I bring you the research, the real talk, and the frameworks you need to lead at your absolute best, even when things feel upside down and on fire. Because half-strength leadership isn't an option. This is Full Strength Leader. You know that feeling when you open LinkedIn and someone in your network just got laid off? And your first thought is not, oh no. It is, thank God that it's not me. Don't move, don't breathe, don't draw attention. If that resonates, this episode is for you. Today we are talking about hunkering down. The trend has dozens of names. You may have heard it as lazy girl jobs, job hugging, the great stay, coffee badging, hush trips. They all describe the same behavior. People are staying in jobs they do not love, declining the stretch projects that are presented to them, and keeping their heads down, calling it boundaries. It looks like wisdom in a chaotic economy with all of the layoffs and the things that we're seeing. But here's the problem. It's not always wisdom. It is a nervous system regulation issue doing exactly what it was built to do thousands of years ago when the threat was a saber-toothed tiger chasing you, not a reorg at your company. Today, we're going to do three things. We're going to look at how widespread this actually is because, guys, the data is wild. We're also going to talk about what is happening in your brain when you hunker down and why it feels like strategy when it is actually paralysis. And then I'm going to give you 3 questions to ask yourself this quarter to make sure you are staying employed without going dormant. Hi, my name is Kabrina Ashley, and this is Full Strength Leader, the leadership that you're looking for, unfiltered. So let's get into it. First, we're going to start with the data, because this is bigger than you think. In March of 2026, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that only 2% of American workers voluntarily quit their jobs that month. That is the quit rate. It sounds small, but compare it to the peak of the Great Resignation in November 2021, when 3% of workers were quitting every month, and you can feel the difference. And I know it's easy to go, it's only 1%, but when we're thinking of thousands and thousands of people, that 1% is a huge difference. So we've gone from a labor market where people felt confident enough to walk out to one where they're white-knuckling their desk chairs, hoping that they're not going to be the next one who gets told that they're fired. Resume Builder also surveyed workers in early 2026, and they asked, do you identify as a job hugger? In August of 2025, when they asked that question, 45% of workers said yes. But by February 2026, that number had jumped to 57% in 6 months. More than half of American workforce is now actively and consciously clinging to the job that they have currently. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, things look bleak in a lot of ways. And so it makes sense that people are like, well, I'm just going to stay where I'm at because at least I have a job right now, which is totally normal to be feeling. So I don't want to be pushing those thought processes aside, but also making you aware that there are other things that we need to be considering when we're making these decisions. So Monster did their own survey, and nearly half of workers said they had joined the trend. 73% said they intend to stay with their current employer for at least 2 more years. And here's the line that should make every leader stop scrolling. 70% of job huggers said they are worried that AI will impact their job security in the next 6 months. So this isn't just about the economy. It's not just about layoff PTSD. This is people who can feel something coming, and their response is to stop moving. Which, when we're thinking about nervous system regulation, we've all heard of fight, flight, symptoms, but there's 4. There's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so what's happening here is that we've got a mass group of people freezing in place and just going in and doing the day-to-day. So if you're one of those people who just feel like, I do the same thing every day and I forget what day it is and it's just, same day, different thing, is all of this idea that we're talking about today. So I want to name something because I know some of you are listening to this and going, okay, but isn't staying but the smart thing to be doing? And like I said earlier, it is sometimes. Sometimes it absolutely is the right thing depending on where you're at, how you answer these questions we're going to go over. The trend in itself is not bad, and the behavior is not in itself bad. What is bad is when the behavior happens without you choosing it, when fear chooses it for you. So if you've strategically sat down and said, this is the reason that I'm staying, and here's the benefits of staying, here's the pros and cons list that I've created for myself, then feel good about your decision and move forward on it. But if you're somebody who's like, oh, I didn't even realize that I was making this decision, then that's where we have to start asking some of these questions that we're going to be posing today. Because there's a difference between I'm staying at this job because it serves my life right now, and I'm being deliberate about my growth, and I'm staying at this job because the idea of leaving makes me feel like I can't breathe. One is a strategy and the other is a symptom. And when we're living in that fear, it makes it really hard to make wise and the right decision in any moment, because as much as we want to feel like having a job in any given moment gives us security, there's a yes and to this, because we all know that at any given moment, a company could go upside down. It could lay us off. Something could happen that makes it to where we no longer have a job at that company. So there is only so much security that is there even when you've decided to hunker down and stay at a position. And here's how you tell the difference. You have to ask yourself, when was the last time you said yes to something at work that scared you a little? When was the last time you raised your hand for a project where you were not 100% sure you could pull it off? When was the last time you put yourself in front of someone senior who did not already know your work? If you can't remember, you're not strategizing. You're probably hibernating. And there's nothing to say that that's bad. But at the same time, how much are we stretching ourselves to the next thing? And sometimes that stretching ourselves means finding a new job. And I've mentioned on here multiple times about the S curve. And so looking more into that and being like, where do I fall in this? But here's where it gets uncomfortable for leaders, because if you are a manager listening to this, your team is doing this too. They're having these ongoing conversations with themselves. And you might be reading it as compliance, or worse, you might be reading it as engagement. Gallup's 2026 State of the Global Workplace report came out earlier this year, and it said that US employee engagement just hit a 31% engagement rate, an 11-year low. The ratio of engaged employees to actively disengaged employees fell to 1.8 from 1.8 to 1, down from 2.1 to 1. And the biggest drop was not workers, it was managers. Those managers that are overseeing all of these workers are less engaged. So manager engagement fell from 27% in 2024 to 22% in 2025. And that's the largest year-over-year drop they have ever recorded. That means that the people, whether you're a leader, you're an HR professional, you're in corporate in some capacity, and you're listening to this, that means that the people who are leading your teams, your leader who you might be looking to, is more disengaged than they ever have been. And you can't lead a hunkered down team if you're hunkered down too. And that is most people right now. Statistically, most people. And I'm not picking on anyone, but the data is the data, and it's something that we need to be considering when we're looking at how our teams are functioning within themselves, and what does that look like for how we grow forward and how we move our teams from point A to point B. A lot of times people want this kind of innovation and people putting in the extra hours and doing more, but then they're also seeing us as the people running a company laying people off, not caring that these people are humans with families and all of these pieces that we forget when we're in the throes of running a business. And when we can start to marry those two of like, yes, we have to run a business. Yes, we have to be profitable for our stockholders. And we have to take care of the people that are here and have those really hard conversations of like, we laid these people off because of X, Y, and Z, and trying to be a little bit more transparent in why we're doing that. Because a lot of people, if you just take 10 or 15 minutes and go on Reddit, you can see the real stories that are happening right now. And the most insidious part of this trend is how respectable it looks from the outside. The hunkered employee shows up on time. They hit their numbers. They don't complain. They don't push back. They don't ask for the promotion. They're not volunteering for the project. They look like a model employee, but they're actually a flight risk in slow motion. Because the moment the market shifts or the moment they hit a wall, they'll not be the one who adapts. They're going to be the one who's already given up and they just have not told anyone yet. So these are also probably the people that, although they're hunkered down in place, are probably putting out applications to other companies just in the background. They're not necessarily going, oh my gosh, I need to hurry up and find a new job, but they might be over the weekend putting out 5 or 10 applications every single week, waiting for something to hit. And the minute that something better hits, they're gone. So you're losing your highest performers because you've done multiple things. This could be because you've decided to let a bunch of people go and make the whole entire company unstable. You have a bad culture issue going on. You've got bad leadership. You have created a bottleneck for that high performer because they're so good at their job. Now you don't want to move them up into the next position. And we start looking at the Dilbert effect and things like that in that situation. And these are all things that are very preventable when we really start to look at how do we care for the people who are helping us run the business. Because at the end of the day, I love AI. I teach AI. I use a lot of AI. But if a computer we start to rely on more than the people who are running the companies for us, we're losing nuance and innovation, which are the most important things for business growth long term. So that's what's happening. The next question is why? Why is the brain choosing hunkering down as the resource? And we're going to go ahead and talk about it. But here's where I get to put my brain-based leadership hat on, because I want you to understand something that I think most people miss when they talk about workforce trends. The brain does not know what year it is. The brain does not know that you live in 2026. Your brain does not know that there is such a thing as a 401k or a severance package or a LinkedIn open to work banner. Your brain runs on hardware that was designed for a world where it got kicked out of the tribe, you died. Full stop. This is not metaphorical. This is actually died. And that hardware inside of us is still there and it's running. This is the same reason that, when you were a kid and your friends stopped talking to you and you were no longer in that group of friends or you were trying to get into another group at school, that it was so tumultuous and your insides felt like they were going to get squeezed out of you. And that's because this is something that we feel internally of, I belong with these people. This is where I belong. If I don't belong, who am I? What do I do? And if you've ever been let go before, you understand this feeling of deer in the headlights. Oh my God, what's next? How do I move from what I've been doing, all these things that I've poured my life into that next section of life? And how do I show the worth that I've brought to a team or to this place in a way that's sustainable for me to mirror to the next people? So when your brain perceives a threat to your social or economic survival, and to your brain, there's no difference between those two, it has 3 primary responses: fight, flight, or freeze. And most leadership content talks about fight and flight. Fight is the person who pushes back, gets aggressive, gets activated, and flight is the person who quits and who runs and who avoids. But there's actually a third and a fourth that we'll talk about in a second response that gets almost no attention, and it is the one that is running Americans in the workplace in 2026, and that's freeze. Freeze is what happens when your brain calculates the fighting will not work and the fleeing is not safe, so it shuts you down. It conserves energy. It makes you small. In animals, you see this with possums playing dead. In humans, it looks like compliance. It looks like staying put. It looks like I'm just keeping my head down. And the fourth one that is not necessarily pertinent here is fawn. But fawning is when we're like, oh my gosh, that was the best idea that you've ever had. And they're the person who's always going to make sure that you feel so good. Like if you're a leader who has a employee who's fawning, these are the people who are going to go, oh my God, I brought you coffee. Oh, hey, I've done all these things. And there's going to be an anxious energy about them because fawning is like, oh yes, you are the best person ever in this whole world. And I'm going to make sure that you know that so that I can worship you. And then thus, because I am giving you all of this affection and worship and all of those things in whatever version they've chosen to do that in, now you are going to be nicer, kinder, more accepting, promote them, whatever it is that they're looking for. Stephen Porges, the neuroscientist who developed polyvagal theory, calls this dorsal vagal shutdown for when we go into freeze. So your dorsal vagal nerve activates when your nervous system decides the threat is inescapable. I'm stuck here. I have to have a job. Quitting is not safe because I don't know if I'm going to be able to find another one. So I can't escape what this is. So I'm just going to stay right here. But what is fascinating and a little terrifying is that it looks what it looks like in modern life. It's it's not this dramatic thing. You don't see it coming. It looks like a high functioning professional who's a little tired, a little checked out, and a little quieter in meetings than normal. But they're producing exactly what is expected. Nothing more and nothing less. But this is where, if you're in this situation, you may feel yourself being like, I'm tired all the time. I don't feel like I can get through the next thing, but you keep pushing because you know that you don't have a choice but to go to work the next day, to show up, to do the things. So you're going through the motions, but there's somewhat of a, my brain's kind of here, but it's also kind of not here feeling that's going on. And there's a term that keeps emerging in trauma research called functional freeze. And this functional freeze is when you keep working, this keeping showing up, keep doing the basics while your nervous system is in shutdown underneath. You can have a calendar full of meetings and be a functional freeze. You can hit your sales numbers and be a functional freeze. You get a promotion and be a functional freeze. This is what hunkering down actually is at the neurological level. It's not strategy, it's a stress response with a calendar invite. And the thing about this is that the more that we look into autoimmune diseases and things like that, a lot of this overstimulated nervous system, this nervous system that never gets to relax, it's always in this kind of outside of what is in rest, never getting to that rest state. This is where we start to see some of those immune compromise come up. And we're starting to see more and more research around these things emerge. So keeping your eyes out and paying attention and being like, how do I get myself into nervous system regulation? As crazy as it sounds, as woo-woo as it can sound, especially when you're a high performer who's like, well, I'm just going to push. I've been taught to just keep going. And if I just work hard, if I'm a high performer, if I do all these things, and that playbook doesn't work anymore. There's too many things. I've been looking at job descriptions for some of my clients, and they're like, they'll have lines in there that say, you are the kind of person who can do 3 people's jobs. Like they're already setting you up for failure before they ever hire you because they're like, oh, yeah, you can do all those things with AI. And there are certain things that you can do that'll make you more productive with AI. But that's taking into effect that there's a lot of things that AI can't do without being constantly told. It's like, can I clean my house with a toddler and a 4th grader? Yes. Can they do work that would make it go faster? Yes. Do I have to tell them every little thing that they have to do? Also, yes. So, what are we getting with this? Because once we get AI trained and doing the things that it needs to do, there are absolutely opportunities where you can do more work. So, I don't want to make it seem like AI is not useful. But I also want to put a reality check on a lot of people are expecting people to come in and act like they've been in a position for 15 years and have two employees under them and then run with it. So, what is that balance between what is actually possible for a person to do and what is possible for a person plus AI to do? Because we have this weird pie in the sky right now because there is no real idea. And some people can put out more than other people can, depending on their knowledge, how long they've been using AI, and so on and so forth. Now, here's the second neuroscience concept I want you to understand, because this is what makes hunkering down so dangerous over time. It is called allostatic load. The term was coined by Bruce McEwen, a neuroscientist at Rockefeller University. And McEwen spent his career studying what happens to the body and brain when stress goes from acute to chronic. He published the foundational work on this in the early 1990s, and it has been replicated thousands of times since. So we know that these things are happening, but we still keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, which is the definition of insanity. But the short version is the body has stress systems that are designed to fire fast and turn off. Cortisol spikes, adrenaline spikes, heart rate climbs. You handle the thing and everything resets. That is allostasis. It is healthy. It's okay to do that. Allostatic load is what happens when the stress does not turn off, when your system stays in low grade activation for months, sometimes even years. We see this in trauma patients. You don't notice it because there is no spike. It's not dramatic, it's just on. It's like if you were to turn on your faucet to wash your hands, but then you just left the faucet on all the time. And it became just this normal thing. You didn't even notice that it was on anymore because of the fact that it's on all the time. Obviously, we're wasting resources and causing issues because the faucet is on all the time. And we do the same thing with this allostatic load where we're constantly in this stress state, running around like crazy people and not thinking about how do we get back into what they call rest and digest system. And then we wonder why we have all of the problems that we do. And what McEwen found is that chronic low grade stress does not just affect your mood, it physically remodels your brain. It shrinks the hippocampus, which is the part of your brain responsible for learning and memory. It inflames the amygdala, which is your fear center, and it weakens the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that handles strategic thinking, judgment, and long term planning. So let me say this in a different way this time, because I want this to land. Hunkering down does not just keep you stuck, it physically erodes the part of your brain that would help you get unstuck. So we want to make sure that we don't stay in a spot where we're constantly in stress and constantly trying to just stay up, keep our head above water, as a lot of people say. Because by the time you decide you're ready to make a move, your brain has started to rewire itself to make moves feel impossible, to make it feel hard to do those things. And you've got less mental energy to go towards that, and less strategic clarity, and less ability to see options. So you feel like you're dumber, like you don't, who's going to want to work with me? How do I really have that many accomplishments? You feel like the process is really slow, and sometimes it is really slow, but this makes you more anxious and you're not exactly sure why. And it's the reason is that you spent months in a functional freeze and your brain's adapted to that. So how do we make sure that you don't do that? And if you have been in a spot like this for multiple months, what does it look like to get yourself out of it? And sometimes it is just saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start putting out applications. I'm going to start looking. I'm going to ask for the raise. I'm going to ask for the position move and see what happens. As scary as that is, because trust me, I've been in these positions where I've been in a corporate space and I've been the one on the other end. and going, if I make this decision, here's all the bad things that could happen. There's absolutely good things, but I think that we tend to, especially when we're in this space, we tend to go, well, yeah, I could get promoted. Yeah, I could get put on a different team. Yeah, that could happen. But we feel like it's more likely that all the bad things are going to happen because there's all these other things. And so having other things in place, putting out other applications, having a safety net there is absolutely acceptable. But making sure that we're staying in place, like we said earlier, because we're doing it out of a strategic, hey, this is the plan moving forward, versus I'm just afraid and I'm just going to stay stuck here forever. And we all have met those people. I'm sure we've had parents that have done this, other people in our lives that were like, they were miserable for 30 years in their job. They stayed because of blank, blank, and blank. And I think that this was more common when we had pensions and retirement and things like that that came from companies. People would stay when they were miserable for decades because they knew that there was something at the end of the tunnel. And when all of those things went away, there really isn't a reason to stay and be miserable when you can be moving yourself into the career that you want. So here's your rebellious reframe. The thing your brain is calling safety today is a tax on the version of you that exists 3 years from now. Safety today means dormancy tomorrow. There is one more piece of research I want to mention before we close out for the day, is there's a whole body of work on something called ambiguity aversion. Brain imaging studies have shown that when people face uncertainty, where you do not know the odds, your amygdala lights up significantly more than when you face known risk. Researchers have found that people treat ambiguous situations as roughly twice as bad as risky situations of equivalent value. That's important to know because what we are living in right now with AI, with the economy, with restructuring, with hybrid versus return to work is not risk, it is ambiguity. Nobody knows the odds. And our brains hate that move more than we hate actual bad news. Because we know, kind of like when we start looking for a new job, we know that it's going to take a long time. When we start looking for a new job and we don't know the status of our job right now, we've introduced ambiguity. And so that cognitive dissonance of like, I don't know exactly what's happening. I don't have the answers. Here's what I thought that I knew. Here's what used to work. And now it's not working anymore. And now I'm frustrated because now I feel stuck. So when you hunker down, you're not responding to bad news. You're responding to no news. And your brain is filling the void with worst case scenarios. And you're organizing your career and your life around those scenarios as if they were already true because we've seen some things. So now we're like, oh, well, that must be the lot that is for me. Well, that may or may not be true. And that's not strategy. That's your amygdala running your calendar. So what do we do about it? And I want you to be careful here because I'm not going to tell you to quit your job. I would never tell you to just jump with the parachute and hope that something's going to come on the other end, or like what they say in entrepreneur spaces of, okay, jump and the net will appear. Nobody jumps off a cliff without preparation of how do I jump? What's going to catch me? How do I make sure that I'm going to be okay? And I think that we've got a lot of narrative in the space that says, oh, if you just go for it, if you just jump, if you just get pushed out of the nest, then you're going to figure it out. And that is not necessarily the best advice. And I'm not going to tell you to lean in. I am an executive coach and I work with real people in real careers and in real economies. So I get it because as a mom, as somebody who makes sure that their kids get what they need, who has to keep a roof over her head, it's always the how do I eat and live indoors question that we have to consider. So what I'm going to give you is a practice, and I call it small ambition. Small ambition is the antidote to hunkering down. It's not big swings. It's not burning your life down. It's not chasing the unicorn job. It is a deliberate quarterly choice to keep one part of you alive that the hunker would shut down. So here are the 3 questions that I want you to ask yourself. I want you to set a recurring calendar reminder. Every 90 days, sit with these for 15 minutes and write them down. And just keep a running tally of what this looks like. So, question 1 is, what did I learn this quarter that I could not have Googled? This is about real learning, not skim the headline learning. Did I sit with something hard? Did I struggle? Did I get reps? Did I have a conversation that changed my mind about something? If the answer is no, you're not learning. You're consuming, and consuming feels productive in the moment, but it doesn't compound over time. So I want you to think about, you did that project. You ended up creating an AI model. You ended up teaching somebody how to do something, and then you learned something about that process in the process of teaching it. Those are things that we tend to take for granted. I personally do this, and I ask my partner to do it at the end of every week, because when you've got kids and plans and vacations and all the things that go into living life, it's very difficult to remember what happened 90 days ago. So for a lot of people, when you have a simple workplace, 90 days is enough. But if you feel like you're not going to remember what you did 90 days ago, try and do it once a week or once a month. So you're answering that question. And the second question is, who knows my work? Who did not know it 90 days ago? So who am I connecting with? This is about visibility. This is not networking in a slimy sense. This is real visibility. Maybe there was a VP who you worked with who didn't know who you were, but then you had 5 or 10 minutes to talk with them as you set something up for them. Did you get to meet one new person anywhere in or outside your organization? And did they get to see what you were capable of? Did someone you do not usually talk to read something you wrote, sit in a meeting where you spoke, see a project you delivered? So, thinking about who was in the meetings that I was in is a really great way to connect with people. If there's somebody new in a meeting, connecting with them on LinkedIn so that you can have that connection. Being like, hey, thanks so much for coming. Following up with people if they've come to something like that. But if the answer is no, you're functionally invisible. And invisible people are the first to get cut and the last to get promoted. So thinking about things like we've talked on here about the hot girl walk of, am I going around the office and going, hey, Susan, how are the kids? Hey, Bob, I heard about your vacation last week. How did it go? Being personable with people, making those connections, seeing if you can be that help to that new person, mentoring other people within the company, which means that you're not hunkering down, you're getting seen, you're getting pushed in there, which is not just helpful for you to feel good about your job and your placement and not feel like it's just the same thing every single day. This is also really great so that even if you do decide to leave this job, you have something to take with you of like, I mentored X amount of people and blah, 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 or I was able to help this person get promoted. Here's the accomplishments that I've done. And then we're going to track all of those so that we can then take those into our resume and into our next job interviews. And finally, question 3 is, what did I say yes to that scared me a little? And this is the hardest one. It's not what scares you a lot, and it's not jump out of a plane scared, but just a little scared. The volunteer assignment, that thing that you're like, oh, I would really rather not do this, but I kind of know there's that little voice inside that says that I should. It's something like a speaking opportunity, a cross-functional project, or an honest conversation with your boss. And if you haven't done any of these and your answer is no, you're not growing. Because when we're growing, we're doing things that we've never experienced before. We're doing things that would scare us just a little. I'm not asking you to jump off of a building. I'm not asking you to quit your job tomorrow and be like some of the big movies where we're like, help me, help you kind of moments. I'm asking you to just push yourself a little bit, make yourself a tiny bit uncomfortable so that you can have something to move forward with and not be 5 years from now and go, what the hell have I done with my life? Now, if you're a leader listening to this, I want you to do this exercise for yourself first, because you can't pull your team out of the hunker if you're in it. And then I want you to do something that is going to feel uncomfortable. I want you to coach the question, not the output, with each of your direct reports. Do not ask them, how are you doing? Because they're going to lie to you. Everyone lies to that question. And they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear. And it's not your fault. It's just them protecting themselves. So instead, I want you to ask them, what is something you wanted to say yes to this quarter and didn't? That question gets past this hunkering down because it's not asking about pain, it's asking about agency. And the answer will tell you exactly where the person is. If their answer is honest, I have not even thought about saying yes to anything, that person is in functional freeze. Your job is not to push them. Pushing makes freeze worse. Your job is to create one small, safe yes for them. So asking questions like, what would you want to say yes to? What excites you? What are things that you would love to see in your career? One small stretch project that is not going to kill them if it goes sideways, something that they can fail at and be like, that's okay, it's a learning experience. One visibility moment for them, one real conversation. If there's a big conference coming up that you know that they're really great at this particular subject matter, is it something that they can speak at? Is it something that they can do a Q&A kind of on stage, getting asked questions about the thing that they do? Because you're not motivating people out of this hunkering down. You have to co-regulate with them and to get them out of it. And the only way to co-regulate is to first regulate yourself and then understand that there's other people that have different ways of processing these things, and helping there be the psychological safety within your organization so you can get them where they need to be. And not every leader that you have, whether you are a leader or you're listening and you're not one, is going to have your best intentions in mind. So saying, I'm going to do this for me, whether I'm considered a leader at my job or not. And if there's other people that I can touch in this, great, because those become your advocates when you get laid off and you reach out to LinkedIn, when you need somebody to take on another piece of a project, when you need to hire somebody at the new company that you've moved over to. These are the relationships that we're building in this. So if you listen to this and you're not sure whether you're hunkered down or you're healthy, that is actually the most important data point. The fact that you're not sure means it's worth checking. I built the Clear audit for exactly this moment. It's 5 questions that are science-backed and takes about 5 minutes, and it will tell you where your team, your culture, and your strategy are sitting right now, not where you think they're sitting. And the link is in the show notes below. And if you're a leader and you want to talk through what to actually do with your team in this moment, book a strategy call. We can have a conversation of what this looks like. What are you actually seeing? What are your people saying to you? And I can't wait to have this conversation with you next week. I will see you on the next episode. And until then, remember, leadership is not a status, it is a practice. And that practice starts with you. We'll see you next week. That's a wrap on today's episode of Full Strength Leader. Take the lesson from today into your leadership this week and see what magic happens. If this episode hit home, I want to hear from you. Drop your questions, your reaction, or your biggest takeaway on Spotify in the comments under this episode. I read every single one, and your questions shape what we talk about next. And if you thought of someone during the show, do me a favor and share this episode with them. And don't forget to follow along so you never miss an episode. You can find me to connect and work with me directly at KabrinaAshley.com. Full Strength Leader starts here. We'll see you next week.